Top tips for aspiring seven-figure Etsy sellers. If you're thinking about getting into Etsy this year, what are some of the biggest tips that I wish someone gave me when I was first starting out? That is what we're gonna be covering in this video, so let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back. Very first tip is once you pick a line of action, stay on that path. Okay, you might be wondering what the heck does that even mean? So, guys, these tips are all coming straight from my course. This is coming from my comment section. This is probably one of the biggest common errors that I see with starting a business. And this is not only true for Etsy, but this is true for any business, right? And there's this transition from making the choice of I want to start a business to then researching everything. And sometimes what happens is you see, oh, I can do digital downloads, I can do print on demand, oh, I can go physical product route, right? You see all these options and all this opportunity. You get really excited and you're like, okay, I'm gonna launch a store in print on demand, but I'm also gonna do digital downloads, but I'm also gonna do a hybrid where I fulfill orders in my office and have physical products. And I wanna do customization over here and I wanna do that over there. It's too much. When you're starting something for the first time, especially if you have no skill set or no prior experience in e-commerce specifically, or even entrepreneurship, that's like trying to start like 6 different engines at one time. And so my best advice, if you are that person, then I would say, rein it back in, rein it back in, because the digital download space versus the print on demand space versus the physical product space versus the personalization space versus the made to order space versus the vintage space, all of those spaces have different needs, wants, fears, and goals, and problems and trials and errors that you're gonna have to overcome. So you might as well work on one thing and become the master of it and have it running on its own engine before you move to the next thing. And it's awesome that you have a lot of enthusiasm about wanting to get your hands in a bunch of different pots because you've been doing so much research, but it's actually gonna end up hurting you, especially if you're starting all of this for the first time with no prior skills or knowledge of actually building something. It's better to become a master of one and then move on to the next thing before you have, 7 half-built engines that aren't really making you money, instead of having one, getting that on an engine, and then moving to the next thing. My next big tip is to set your expectations that you have to spend money. And so this might seem like common sense to some of you, but I will tell you right now, in my comment sections, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like social media or people on YouTube or TikTok, but a lot of people have an expectation that you don't have to spend money, particularly in the ad spend realm, and you think it's free. I would never ever recommend someone open a business if they're not willing to invest in said business. And yes, that means spending money on your ads. Obviously, you don't want to spend money on ads to unoptimized listings, which this is something that I preach, and I have a lot of videos that I can link above and below that I talk about how to optimize your listing before you go to market. And then, only then, that's when you want to go ahead and spend money on ads. But one key element to my success was being super aggressive with spending money on ads. And once it becomes so competitive to the point where you have to spend money ads, you have to be prepared mentally that you're gonna go negative before you go positive. Now, obviously, that's not true for every store. Some stores will come out of the gates being profitable, but you wanna set the expectation in the worst case scenario so you're prepared for if it comes to, in month 1, month 2, month 3, I'm negative, especially on my ads, I'm not gonna stop, because essentially that's what it takes. You need to be able to invest money in your business to make money. And like I said, as it becomes more competitive, it's gonna only become more pay to play as more people enter the space. This is probably why some of my videos don't get the views they want, because I'm not gonna sell you the dream. Like, the reality is it costs time and it costs money. And that leads me to tip number 3, which we kind of touched on before, which is intentionally launching products. So I would say that yes, Etsy is a horizontal scale. It's very much you know, if you want to make more money, you need to launch more products once you have your ads maxed out. But it's not just putting out products just to put out products, right? Every single product that you launch should be thought out. You should do competitor research, keyword research, creative and strategic marketing research, and put that product out knowing that you're competitive before you even push the publish button. And I will link a video above here on another video that I can watch of what that looks like, actually like hands-on what that looks like to build a competitive listing. You can have thousands and thousands of products, but if you're just throwing out products that aren't in sync with your branding or your store, or they're not competitive, then it really doesn't matter. And you're just spending a lot of time at that point and not intentionally putting out winning products. And not every product that you're gonna put out is winning. And yes, everything is subject to test, but when you do put out a product, you wanna set it up for the best case scenario based off of data, based off the research that you've done, and based off of your own higher level, you know, intellectual mind, what you personally think is going to win. And then when you put your listing out to the world, you know that you are competitive at the start. My next tip is test everything. We kind of touched on this before. When you go to set up your listing, essentially you're going to pull in all the data and you're going to try to set yourself up for the best case scenario. In doing that, one thing that I suggest and recommend you do is split test. You can split test by running 2 listings against each other. So you could take, if you had a succulent, you're selling this succulent, right? And you staged it on a white background, you could take this succulent and pair it with another succulent and then run it against another listing that has 2 succulents with a different background. So for every product that you launch, I would bundle it or reshoot it with a different background or a different value proposition a couple of times, other than just testing one product in one listing. Start by split testing, you know, and seeing which ones get the highest CTR for you, which stands for click-through rate, followed by which one actually ends up making you the most revenue. So if you only have 20 products, in theory, you could turn those 20 products into like 60 or 70 listings by duplicating the listing or bundling them together in different ways, or changing the images, or testing out keywords multiple times. And one thing that people say, well, doesn't that confuse your customers if you have multiple listings of the same thing? My only recommendation there is you just want to keep the price the same for the most part. You could test out doing a free shipping and a non-free shipping on 2 of the listings if you wanted, but the end price is going to end up being the same once either the customer pays for shipping or if they have free shipping, right? So few people actually make it to your Etsy storefront because they buy directly off the listing that you're really not going to end up, you're not going to get a huge amount of customer service of people asking you why it's in 2 listings. It's actually, I never get those messages ever. My next business tip is, again, it's another setting expectation tip, which is, guys, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. You're solely chasing money and you're putting pressure on yourself of like, I need to have this much money in my bank account by this date, and you just go ham without putting out intentional listings and just trying to build something fast and kind of half-assing everything. 1, you're gonna burn out super, super fast, and 2, you're not gonna make money if you're just rushing through it and you're not actually really trying to build a brand. You may make some sales, but you're not gonna make the sales that you would expect if you actually put in the time and energy to creating a real brand. It's better to focus on putting out 2 to 3 listings per week when you first start over 2 years, then try to get 1 million listings launched within the first 30 days and then you burn out and then hate your life and then feel like you wasted all this time and energy for it not to work out. Take your time. Small hedges over a long time is better than sprinting as fast as you can to get to the finish line, but then like you never even make it to the finish line because you give up before you even make it there. My next tip is do not steal people's images and designs. You can go, when you do your competitor analysis and product research, go and get inspired by what's working, and you want to improve on what is working and build upon that. If you go into Etsy and you just start ripping people's designs and copying people or even stealing images, like you're just signing yourself up to get your account suspended. And also it's just bad e-commerce juju. Honestly, I've had people literally buy my stuff, take it, mold it, and then sell the same thing for a quarter of the price. And like, you would never want it to happen to you. Don't do it to other people. I feel like those people always get bad come back to them. So just don't do that. My next tip is implement the belief that you can learn anything. So much about e-commerce, so much about Etsy, so much about entrepreneurship is becoming the ultimate problem solver. Remove the limiting belief that you're just not good at something, or that it's not, oh, I can't do that because I don't know how. You need to believe that you can learn anything or have the knowledge to figure out how to find somebody with that skill set to complete said thing. And if you have those things holding you back, it's gonna make your journey so much more difficult. If you want to learn something or acquire a new skill, you need to believe that you can. And if you believe you can, as corny as that sounds. It's a real thing. I've taught myself photography, I've taught myself media buying, I've taught myself listing optimization, I've taught myself how to sew, I've taught myself how to be a leader and lead a team. I taught myself bookkeeping. Now, I'm not the best at all of them, but I can get it done, or I know how to outsource it to get it done from somebody else. Remove the limiting belief that you're just not good at something. You can be good at anything, or you can get anything done if you really want to. This has been proven to me in so many facets of my life, not me, just me, but watching other entrepreneurs, especially other entrepreneurs where the odds were just like not in their favor whatsoever. And somehow they managed to grow wildly multi-million dollar businesses. Next tip, I'm gonna bring it back to Etsy ads, okay? So a lot of times when you're running Etsy ads, people are looking at basically, okay, I spent this much, and there's a part in your Etsy ads account that says your ads generated you XYZ amount. And when people start running ads for the first time, they immediately get pissed off when they see, oh my gosh, I spent $200, but my Etsy ads only made me $200. It's okay to reference what your ads made you, but what's even more important is looking at what your ads spent in comparison to your top line sales. So if your business is a pie chart, your pie chart is composed of all these different expenses, right? One of those pie pieces is gonna end up being what is called your net profit. So what profit you actually take home after all of your expenses. Now, all of these expenses should be pretty concrete. The only variable expense that you don't really know is that marketing expense, because when you start your Etsy store for the first time, you don't know what that marketing cost percentage is until you start running your ads. So if you spend $10 a day for 30 days, that's $300. That $300 then becomes a percentage of your top line sales. So I recommend to look at how much you spent versus your top line sales, not what the ads generated you. Why? Because when you spend money on Etsy PPC, Etsy is gonna reward your store as a whole and increase your store SEO as a whole. So even though it says that it only generated you maybe a quarter of the amount, what you care about is your top line sales. Now, to put this in perspective, spending 20 to even up to 80% of your total revenue on marketing is normal when you first start a business. Like 20 to 80%, right? And different niches optimize differently. And so a lot of times people get caught up and scared when they don't see that they're making sales right away, and they start turning them on and off. And this is really bad for your account because you're not getting an accurate view of what your listings are doing when you're spending money. If you want to even just spend $5 a day, spend $5 a day, but don't turn it off after 3 days of it not making you a bunch of money. Because most cases, if you're a new account, it's gonna be more expensive for you than say, somebody that already has 3,000 reviews, because you have no social proof. It's gonna be harder for you to convert a customer when you don't have reviews or social proof. In theory, as your account gets optimized, as you get reviews, and you can only get reviews by making sales, that cost should go down. So if you start out the first 6 months, it's 80%. Over time, the goal is to get that down obviously as low as possible. Putting a budget is better than nothing when you first start out, and don't turn it on and turn it off. If you want to spend $2 a day, spend $2 a day until you're comfortable spending $5 a day. But it is going to help your account. Obviously, don't run ads to unoptimized listings, then you're just wasting money at that point. That leads me into my next tip. Once a listing gets a significant amount of views, and say it's eating up a lot of your ad budget, but the listing actually has no add to carts, it has no ROAS, and it's just getting a lot of clicks and you're just wasting a lot of money, and it's also not making organic sales, then I would go ahead and turn off that listing if it just spent a bunch of money. That KPI for how much it should spend before you turn it off, that's up to you. It's depending on your price point. Like this brand, the prices are pretty high, so I'm okay with spending $50 and not making any sales to figure out if I need to turn it on or off or not. And also, it takes a long time for Etsy to optimize your listings or start indexing it in the algorithm. Etsy says it can take up to like 3 months, honestly, before it really knows where you deserve to be. And when you start running ads on the listing, it just speeds up that process a lot faster. It rips off the Band-Aid faster to figure out if the listing is gonna be a winning listing or not. Those are some of my top tips. If you have any other of your own tips, make sure you comment them in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.